I felt like I could see a tidal wave of darkness rushing towards us. When people started talking about this illness that was happening in China, I was flying around Europe and I just thought, this is going to be huge. It was going to be life-changing. It became very apparent that all aircraft were going to be grounded, which meant there were going to be thousands of crew across the country and across the world who were grounded. All we heard about in the news was the NHS is about to face its biggest challenge yet.
I knew there was a big problem coming for us as aircrew, but I also knew that the NHS needed help, and there's a skill set that we had as pilots that works perfectly in a medical setting.
I very vividly remember what has turned out to be the last flight I ever captained. I can remember being on board it and knowing that we were looking towards being grounded. Everybody was in tears, the passengers as well. We were all thinking, what's going to happen next? During that flight, and probably leading up to it as well, I had already been thinking to myself, if we get grounded, there's thousands of aircrew
Suddenly going to become available. The NHS needed support, had put this idea together, which was that uniformed aircrew would go into NHS hospitals
to create a space, create a first-class lounge scenario
where NHS staff could go and they would be welcomed a bit like they would be welcomed onto an aircraft, and they would be offered a cup of tea or coffee and a biscuit and a chat.
I set up a charity called Project Wingman, of which I'm now CEO.
3 weeks later, we opened our first lounge in London in middle of March 2020. We had 700 people signed up to help in the first 3 days. And by summer 2020, we had 6,500 uniformed crew across the country going into hospitals, 104 hospital lounges across all 4 nations of the United Kingdom.
Initially, the idea was that we would approach hospitals and ask them to provide us with a large enough space that would allow for social distancing. And it would be a space where we could just provide a different atmosphere, a space where people on busy shifts who often weren't going home for days on end could unwind, relax, just have a little bit of a change of scene during their hospital shifts, because what they were seeing was already pretty bad back in March. Before even some of the stories started to hit the news, there was a lot of stress and anxiety and difficulty amongst NHS staff. So it was just really a way of lifting them up and saying, we're here, we're listening, how can we help you? But to try and give them that extra bit of care when they were really on their knees.
So it was tea and empathy, basically. Just come and take the weight off your feet. Come and talk about whatever's bothering you today.
We've had such fantastic feedback. Things like, you've changed the working culture of this hospital. We've had hospital management saying, you know, our staff now feel so valued because of the welfare that you're able to provide. We receive messages on a daily basis from people whose lives we've touched. Individuals telling us that, you know, they wouldn't have got through some of the dark days without us being there. You've literally saved my life.
We described ourselves as wrapping a warm blanket of care around the NHS when it was out in the cold. We're still running now, so we've changed the way that we work because hospitals needed their spaces back. So we now have converted double-decker buses that are mobile wellbeing lounges that we take to hospitals across the country. They're just fabulous spaces. And they let so much light in. They also have tub chairs that are fitted. We have massage chairs on board, and we have air conditioning and heating for the winter, and big TV and foot massagers. So you basically come and take the weight off your feet, and it's time that somebody else is looking after you. It's built an aircrew community, but it's also supported NHS staff.
We were doing what a wingman does. A wingman has your back. A wingman's there to cover you. And that's exactly what our offer really was to the NHS. We had their backs at a time when they really needed us to do that.
It's even more of a privilege and honour to be continuing to run the charity and continuing to carry out that work with NHS staff.
the people who've been literally keeping the country alive.
Who arguably probably need the support more now than they ever did before.
I think Project Wingman will continue for some time to come.